Imagine buying a business where millions of people are almost guaranteed to visit every year. Airlines need it. Travelers depend on it. And once it's built, competitors can't simply open another one next door. Sounds like the perfect investment, right? Not exactly. For every airport that becomes a money-making machine, another struggles under mountains of debt. Some airports earn billions over decades, while others never recover the money spent to build them. So what separates a world-class airport from a billion-dollar mistake? To answer that, we need to look behind the scenes of one of the most expensive businesses ever created. When most people think about airports, they picture planes taking off, passengers rushing through security and crowded terminals. Investors see something completely different. They see a business that combines transportation, retail real estate, logistics, hospitality, and infrastructure into a single operation. It's like owning a shopping mall, a hotel district, a parking company, and a transportation network, all at the same time. That combination has attracted governments, investment funds, and billion-dollar companies from around the world. But owning an airport isn't as simple as buying land and waiting for planes to arrive. The money can be enormous, but so are the risks. Let's start with how airports became investment opportunities in the first place. For most of the last century, airports weren't considered businesses. Governments built them because countries needed safe transportation. Their goal wasn't to maximize profits. It was to connect cities, support trade, and move people efficiently. Over time, something changed. Air travel exploded. Millions became billions of passengers. Airports grew into busy commercial centers, and governments realized these facilities weren't just public services anymore. They had become valuable assets capable of generating steady income year after year. That caught the attention of private investors. Unlike many businesses that constantly fight new competitors, airports often have a natural advantage. A city usually has one main international airport. Airlines don't have endless alternatives, and passengers can't easily choose another location. For long-term investors, that's an attractive position. Instead of chasing short-term profits, they focus on what the airport could earn over the next 30, 40, or even 50 years. That's why infrastructure funds, pension funds, and large investment firms often compete to acquire airports around the world. But not every country follows the same model. Many people assume airports are privately owned. In reality, ownership varies dramatically. Across much of Europe and Australia, private companies often manage airports through long-term agreements or ownership stakes. Governments receive large payments up front, while private operators invest in upgrades and manage daily operations for decades. Everyone benefits in different ways. The government gains immediate funding without permanently giving away the asset. The private company gains decades to recover its investment and earn profits. The airport benefits from continued investment and professional management. The United States took a different path. Most major American airports are still owned by local or state governments. One reason is financing. Public airports can often borrow money using special government-backed bonds that reduce borrowing costs. Private companies usually don't have access to those same financial advantages, making full privatization less attractive. So around the world, airports may have different owners. But regardless of ownership, every airport faces the same challenge: keeping the business profitable. That's where things become much more interesting. If you purchase an existing airport, much of the hard work has already been done. The runways exist, the terminals are operating, airlines already fly there, passengers already know the airport. Building one from nothing is an entirely different story. Before construction even begins, developers face their first obstacle: land. An international airport requires an enormous amount of space, not just for runways, but also for terminals, cargo facilities, maintenance buildings, parking lots, fuel storage, hotels, roads, and future expansion. Finding a location that meets all those requirements is incredibly difficult. It must have enough open land. It needs environmental approval. Communities may need to relocate. Roads and utility systems often have to be redesigned. Years can pass before a single shovel touches the ground. And every year adds more costs. Then comes construction itself. A runway isn't simply a strip of concrete. It's engineered to withstand thousands of heavy landings from aircraft weighing hundreds of tons. Beneath the surface are carefully designed layers, drainage systems, electrical networks, lighting equipment, and safety technology. Every detail must meet strict international standards, and the runway is only the beginning. The terminal is even more complicated. Think of it as a miniature city operating 24 hours a day. It needs baggage systems, security checkpoints, backup power, climate control, emergency services, communication networks, and countless other systems working together without interruption. One small mistake can delay the entire project. Unfortunately, history shows that happens more often than people realize. Building an airport is expensive. Building one slowly is even more expensive. Most airport projects rely heavily on borrowed money. That means interest payments begin immediately, even if the airport hasn't welcomed a single passenger. Imagine paying millions every month while earning absolutely nothing. Every delay pushes profitability further into the future. We've seen airports around the world spend years fixing engineering problems. redesigning safety systems, or replacing equipment that failed testing. Each additional month increases construction costs, financing costs, and pressure on investors. Sometimes the airport finally opens, only to face terrible timing. Economic downturns, travel slowdowns, or global crises can dramatically reduce passenger traffic just when investors expect revenue to begin flowing. That creates one of the biggest lessons in infrastructure investing. Success isn't determined only by building a great airport. It's also determined by opening it at the right time. And even after the grand opening, the biggest question still remains. How does an airport actually make money? Most people think they already know the answer, but they're usually only seeing half the business. Most people assume airports make their money from airplanes. That's true, but only partly. In reality, airports operate two separate businesses at the same time. The first is aviation. The second is everything surrounding aviation. Let's start with the obvious one. Every airline using an airport pays for access. There are fees for landing, parking aircraft, using passenger gates, baggage handling, and other airport services. With hundreds of flights arriving and departing every day, those payments create a steady stream of income. But here's the catch. Airport operators usually can't charge whatever they want. Because airports often have little competition, many governments regulate airline fees to prevent excessive pricing. If airport operators want to increase charges, they often need approval from regulators. That limits how much revenue can come directly from airlines. So airports look elsewhere for growth, and that's where the real money often begins. Think about what happens after you pass through airport security. Suddenly, you're surrounded by coffee shops, restaurants, clothing stores, duty-free stores, electronics, souvenirs, luxury brands, and endless food options. That's no accident. Modern airports are carefully designed to encourage spending. The longer travelers remain inside the terminal, the greater the chance they'll buy something. Even small purchases matter. A bottle of water, a cup of coffee, a quick meal, a last-minute gift. Multiply those purchases by tens of millions of passengers every year, and the numbers become enormous. Many stores don't simply pay fixed rent. Instead, airports often receive a percentage of each store's sales. If business grows, airport revenue grows as well. Parking creates another surprisingly profitable business. Thousands of travelers leave their cars for days or even weeks while they're away. Daily parking fees may seem reasonable individually, but across thousands of vehicles, they generate huge amounts of income. Then there are hotels, rental car companies, advertising space, office buildings, cargo warehouses, and even undeveloped land around the airport. When people think airports make money from airplanes, they're often overlooking half the business. Generating revenue is only one side of the equation. Keeping an airport running is unbelievably expensive. Unlike many businesses, airports can't simply shut down when traffic slows. Security must remain active. Firefighters stay on duty. Runways require constant inspection. Lighting systems stay operational. Air traffic equipment needs maintenance. Electricity flows every hour of every day. Even on quiet nights, the airport must be prepared for emergencies. Weather creates another challenge. In colder climates, airports invest millions in snowplows, de-icing equipment, specialized vehicles, and maintenance crews. Those machines may sit unused for days or weeks. But when winter storms arrive, they must work immediately. Failure isn't an option. The biggest issue is that many of these expenses barely change, whether passenger traffic is high or low. An airport serving 10 million travelers still has many of the same fixed costs as one serving 20 million. Revenue rises and falls. Operating costs often don't. That imbalance becomes dangerous during unexpected crises. Few industries experienced a shock as severe as aviation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Within weeks, airports that normally handled thousands of flights each day became almost empty. Passengers disappeared. Parking lots sat vacant. Restaurants closed. Retail stores had almost no customers. Income dropped almost overnight. But expenses didn't disappear with the passengers. Security still had to protect the airport. Maintenance teams still inspected runways. Utilities still powered massive terminals. Loan payments still had to be made. Insurance bills still arrived. Many airport operators were forced to find creative ways to survive. Some temporarily reduced rent for airport stores instead of forcing businesses to close. Others expanded cargo operations. While passenger travel collapsed, demand for shipping medical supplies, online orders, electronics, and food remained strong. Cargo couldn't replace every dollar that was lost, but it helped airports continue generating income during one of the most difficult periods in aviation history. The pandemic exposed one important truth. Airports are incredibly resilient over the long term, but in the short term, they're surprisingly vulnerable, and that's why choosing the right airport matters just as much as owning one. It might seem like building an airport guarantees success. After all, people will always need to fly. But history tells a different story. Some airports fail before they ever become profitable, not because the buildings are poor or the runways are too short, but because there simply aren't enough passengers. An airport is a business built on volume. If only a small number of travelers use it each year, the math becomes difficult. The lights still need to stay on. Security officers still report to work. Fire crews remain on standby. Runways still need inspections and repairs. Those expenses don't shrink just because fewer planes arrive. That's why many smaller regional airports depend on government support to survive. Their purpose isn't always to make money. Sometimes they're kept open because they connect remote communities, support local economies, or provide emergency transportation. Without public funding, many would struggle to remain open. Even airports with regular flights can face another hidden risk, depending too heavily on a single airline. Imagine an airport where one low-cost airline brings most of the passengers. At first, it looks like a perfect partnership. The airline fills the terminal with travelers. Local businesses benefit. The airport becomes busier. But there's a downside. Large airlines often have strong negotiating power. Because the airport depends on them, they may demand lower landing fees, marketing support, or other financial incentives. The airport agrees because losing that airline could mean losing most of its passengers. If the airline later decides to move its operations somewhere else, the airport can experience a dramatic drop in traffic almost overnight. That leaves expensive facilities sitting underused while operating costs remain almost unchanged. Successful airports avoid becoming too dependent on any single customer. Instead, they attract multiple airlines, different routes, and several sources of revenue. Diversification makes the business much more stable. Some airport failures weren't caused by poor management. They started with one bad decision, choosing the wrong location. A beautiful terminal means nothing if airlines don't want to fly there. Passengers also care about convenience. If reaching the airport takes too long or requires extra travel, many people will simply choose another option. Several airports around the world were built with huge expectations. Developers imagined millions of travelers, busy terminals, and thriving businesses nearby. The infrastructure was impressive. The investment was massive. But demand never arrived. Airlines saw little reason to move flights. Passengers preferred more convenient airports. Without enough flights, shops struggled. Without enough travelers, parking lots stayed empty. Eventually, some of these airports became symbols of overconfidence rather than successful infrastructure projects. The lesson is simple. Building an airport doesn't create demand. Demand must already exist, or there must be a very strong reason to believe it will. Otherwise, even the most modern airport can become an expensive mistake. Now, let's look at the opposite side. What separates the world's most successful airports from everyone else? Scale. The busiest airports welcome tens of millions of passengers every year. Some handle well over 100 million. At that level, even tiny improvements create enormous financial results. Imagine every passenger spends just $1 extra on food, coffee, parking, or shopping. For a small airport, that's helpful. For a global hub serving millions of travelers, it can mean tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars in additional revenue every year. Large hub airports also benefit from something even more valuable. They become difficult to replace. Major airlines rely on them for connecting flights. Cargo companies use them to move goods around the world. International travelers pass through them every day. Once an airport becomes a key transportation hub, it gains a powerful competitive advantage. Airlines often can't afford to leave because doing so would disrupt their entire network. That's one reason the largest airports remain attractive investments despite their enormous costs. They've become essential parts of the global economy. The airport business continues to evolve. Today's airports are no longer just places where people catch flights. Increasingly, they're becoming business centers. Many cities are building hotels, office parks, warehouses, conference centers, shopping districts, and logistics facilities around airports. Instead of serving only travelers, airports are becoming economic hubs that support thousands of businesses. Technology is changing the experience too. Facial recognition, automated passport control, digital boarding, and smarter baggage systems are reducing waiting times. For passengers, that means a smoother journey. For airports, it creates another opportunity. When travelers spend less time standing in lines, they spend more time exploring the terminal, and that often leads to higher spending inside the airport. The future airport isn't simply a transportation center, it's becoming a destination in its own right. From the outside, owning an airport looks like a simple business. Planes land, passengers arrive, money comes in. But behind every successful airport is an incredibly complex operation involving construction, engineering, finance, real estate, retail, logistics, and long-term planning. The biggest profits don't come from one runway. They come from managing an entire ecosystem where transportation and commerce work together. That's why airports can create enormous wealth over decades. But they're also capable of destroying billions of dollars when demand is overestimated, projects are delayed, or locations are chosen poorly. In the end, the most successful airport investors don't think about next year's profits. They think decades ahead. Because an airport isn't just a place where aircraft take off and land. It's one of the largest, most complicated, and most valuable businesses a city can ever build. And when it's managed well, it can keep generating value for generations. Before you decide that owning an airport is the ultimate investment, remember this. An airport doesn't become valuable simply because airplanes use it. It becomes valuable because millions of people, thousands of businesses, and entire industries depend on it every single day. When everything goes right, an airport can generate steady income for decades. It can survive economic cycles, support regional growth, and become one of the most important assets in a country's infrastructure. But when the planning is wrong, demand is overestimated, or unexpected events disrupt travel, those same advantages can quickly turn into massive financial burdens. Billions of dollars can disappear before investors ever see the returns they expected. That's what makes airport investing so fascinating. It's not just about aviation, it's about predicting the future of an entire region, its population, tourism, trade, business activity, and economic growth. The runway may be where planes land, but the real business is everything built around it. And that's why owning an airport remains one of the most challenging and potentially rewarding investments in the world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into how billion-dollar businesses really work, make sure to subscribe, because next time we'll uncover another industry that looks simple on the surface but operates in ways most people never realize. Until then, thanks for watching.